This is The Whole Truth.
Tonight on a special edition of The Whole Truth, DNA, genetic engineering, cloning. The daily advances in biotechnology are almost overwhelming. But what does it really mean for our lives? And where will it ultimately lead us? Good evening, I'm Donald Rivers, and what you're going to see tonight will shock you, maybe even terrify you. You might be tempted to turn away or change the channel, hoping or praying that none of this is true. It will be my job, my responsibility, to make you listen, to make you believe. How many times have our own elected officials deceived us, used us? Alabama, 1932. The U.S. government denies penicillin to black men infected with syphilis so that researchers can observe the disease run its course. The Tuskegee experiment continues for the next 40 years as scientists watch their subjects' bones, hearts, and nerve tissue slowly disintegrate and do nothing to stop it. 1946, as part of the Manhattan Project, the government secretly injects 12 patients in Rochester, New York, with uranium and plutonium to test the effects of radiation exposure on human beings. 50 years later, the Department of Energy releases files detailing similar experiments on nearly 20,000 other people, including prisoners, mentally disabled children, and pregnant women. 1953, the CIA initiates MK-Ultra, a series of experiments in advanced mind control techniques, including electroshock therapy and psychoactive drugs on a wide variety of often unsuspecting subjects. The project is spread out across a vast network of governmental and private institutions and continues in secret for nearly 20 years. Time and again, our government has openly confirmed our worst, most paranoid fears. And if that's what they're willing to admit, then what have they chosen to conceal?
My name, as I said, was Paul Hellyer. I'm a former Minister of National Defence for Canada. I served in 3 governments during a total of 23 and a half years as a Member of Parliament. Although as Minister of National Defence, I had sighting reports of UFOs. I was too busy to be concerned about them at the time because I was trying to unify the Army, Navy, and Air Force into a single Canadian Defence Force. And that itself was a kind of battle to the finish. So this was not high on my agenda. But about 10 years ago, I started getting interested due to a young man from Ottawa sending me material on the subject. I told him I was too busy to read it, but he had confidence that someday I would. He sent me a copy of Colonel Corso's book, The Day After Roswell. It took me a while to get around to reading it, but I took it for my summer reading in 2005 and was really impressed with what was contained in it. And what I thought to myself is there are huge issues here, huge issues. And the American people and the people of the world have a right to know what's going on, because they're part of it. It's not just an isolated thing. So after confirming the contents of the book with a retired United States Air Force general, I accept the invitation of Victor Vigiani, who's over here somewhere, and his cohort Mike Bird to speak to a symposium at the University of Toronto. And I said, UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. That gave me the dubious distinction of being the first person of cabinet rank in the G8 group of countries to say so unequivocally. First is that about in the 1960s sometime, there was a flotilla of UFOs headed south that crossed into NATO territory in Europe, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Supreme Allied headquarters in Europe was naturally very shaken. Fortunately, or maybe divine providence, before The panic button was pushed. The flotilla turned around and headed back north. Obviously, they had thought maybe they were Russian and they were very concerned about it. Anyway, investigation was launched into this whole subject, and the document was prepared, which concluded that at least 4 species had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. And this is my own view at this stage as well. So, except for that, there are just a couple of things that we've talked about that I'd like to refer to. And one was that we were referring to them as they until this morning when Linda Moulton Howe, I think she was the first one, actually named 3 different species. I have brought my latest book called Light at the End of the Tunnel, The Survival Plan for the Human Species, as an aide-memoir, and I named 5 different species here. I'm aware of more now. As a matter of fact, I saw a document just a few days ago that mentioned 20. And I think you, Mr. Chairman, were interested in some of the places they might come from. And I have in here Zeta reticuli, R-E-T-I-C-U-L-I, reticuli, the Pleiades, Orion, and Romita, and the Altair star systems. So, I don't think we can any more refer to them as they, because they're not an amorphous mass. They are different species and consequently may have different agendas. I don't think we can say that they all have the same agenda any more than we can say that the United States, China, and Russia have the same agenda. Our real interests may be very similar, but as of now our perceived interests are still quite far apart. One more observation before I begin what I want to say. And that is that we spent quite a bit of time talking about the 66-year-old cadavers. And I was glad to have Linda this morning finally say that there are live ETs on Earth at this present time. And at least 2 of them probably working with the United States government. The other species that I learned about not too long ago was called the tall whites. And this is when Paula Harris broke the story just a few years ago. And through her good offices, I had the chance to talk for about 3 hours with former Airman Charles Hall and listen to this absolutely fascinating story of how he was working. First of all, he was scared out of his skin. But after that, when he got to know them, how he was working with, and finally we became to trust each other and have a good working relationship with the tall whites at the gunnery range at Indian Springs, Nevada. And these tall whites were living on United States Air Force property and working in cooperation with the United States Air Force and sharing technology with it. He wrote a book, incidentally, called Millennial Hospitality. There are 4 different versions, but Paula says that Millennial Hospitality number 2 is the best. I think that's the one I read, and it's a very interesting read if you want to sort of get inside the problem of what it's like to bump into these people floating across the terrain in the desert. Enough on that for now. My interest is in full disclosure. And my only caveat is, I think probably I would say 95 to 98% full disclosure. I know of 1 or 2 things that I'm not sure should be in the public domain, at least yet. It will be someday, I'm sure, but not immediately. But just as children survive the idea of the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus when they become adults, I think that tax-paying citizens are quite capable of accepting the new and broader reality that we live in a cosmos teeming with life of various sorts. The fact that some other civilizations are more advanced than we are may be humbling, but that could be a necessary step in our survival.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
The question is often asked, when will UFO disclosure happen?
These lights, they keep coming together.
The answer is, it has.
The New York Times revealed the existence of a secret government program to investigate UFO sites.
This is a very complicated story. I have put a briefing together for every president since Bill Clinton. Interplanetary war.
Look at this.
This is the next big thing that they want the public to be afraid of.
This is a national security imperative.
We must have American dominance in space.
But it's all a lie.
The national security state. They want to establish a planetary government by spinning that this is a threat.
One set of facts, two narratives. The threat isn't extraterrestrial. The threat is covert human.
The Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols, developed by Dr. Greer, is the most dangerous information he has released to the public. Human-initiated communication with extraterrestrials is possible.
All of us are going to know the truth. This is our moment.
We have the ability to change life for the better.
Consciousness isn't limited by space and time. What I'm doing with CE5 is the foundation for the relationship between humans and these extraterrestrials.
The implications are absolutely profound. It shows consciousness does affect reality.
A critical mass of people can shift an entire civilization. But the intelligence community don't want the public to know. They say, what's in it for me? It's easy. A new world, if you can take it.
Oh my God.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a special report.
Good evening. Unexpected meteor showers have been reported over North America, Europe, and Asia, causing widespread damage and disruption to many communication systems. The National Weather Service reports... Controller, what is going on? Al, what is...
What the hell is going on? Major Stewart, you getting this?
Affirmative. Commander Crane, unidentified flying objects approaching Earth.
Plot their approach vector and sound red alerts.
My God. There are thousands of them.
Lord, most